Hello, hello, hello. Thanks for coming to Larger Curves today. Make sure you smash the like button and smash the subscribe button on your way in, Curvies. Can you hear me okay? Let's see. Can you hear me okay? Because the other day I was talking and have my mute button pressed, but it sounds like we can hear me. Go ahead and smash the like button, smash the subscribe button. Like I said, if you haven't already, ring the bell so you can get notified. Today we are talking about Sinners. Oh my gosh, I went and saw this movie and it's so good. The symbolism was not lost on me. The imagery was not lost on me. I'm going to go see it again. And because I'm positive I missed some stuff because I'm positive I missed some stuff. So if you saw Sinners and you want to come up and give your thoughts about it, I'm going to drop the link. Where is the link? Copy this. Yes. Okay, you guys. So, Sinners by Ryan Coogler. Excellent freaking movie. And I was scared because I don't really like horror movies a lot. But I am a fan of vampire movies. Because I don't know, to me, it's not like full on Freddy Krueger or Jason. Like those movies scare me. Yeah, I'm that old. I bring up Freddy in a scary movie conversation. Yep. Okay. Sounds like I'm mukbanging over here. Where's my water? Okay. Ooh. That was so good. Wait a second. Now, did you guys see Sinners? Did anybody in the chat happen to see Sinners? I've already dropped the link. I'm going to talk about what the movie represented to me and some interesting scenes. I mean, this could literally be a thesis. The social conversation in the movie that's relevant to today and just the history of people against colonizers, indigenous people against colonizers, is not lost on me. So, excuse me, let's see. So this image right here is Sinners. Michael B. Jordan played twins, Elijah and Elias, and they were twins, Smoke and Stack. And everything that happened in this movie, you guys, happened in one day. in one day. So even the symbology of that is very like incredible. So the movie opens with a young man pulling up in an open top kind of Ford T model car, one of those open top kind of cars you had to like crank back in the day. And it's set in sharecropper kind of uh I think it's post antebellum because the Klan was around, but the people were free. It wasn't like there were slave catchers. So it was during that era. And the twins haven't been introduced. Like I said, it starts with a young gentleman. Ooh, Diary of Rhubarby. Have you seen Sinners? Oh my gosh, so good. So he pulls up to a church and he gets out with the fret of the, that's what is that what it's called? The fret of the guitar? Let's see, let me make sure. Just the handle of the guitar, you know, the part that you play, not the body part. Everything is spinning a lot. So a fret is just the metal. I'm talking about the, yeah, yeah. So it's where the fret would be. So the handle is connected to the fret. Let's see. So the head. So he gets out of the car just holding the head and the neck of the guitar. And some frets are visible, the strings are gone. He's covered in blood. He looks well shaken. He has these horrible scratches on the side of his face. It looks like the alien from freaking Alien got him. And he opens the doors to the church. And a preacher is in there and he says, "Come on in." And he takes a timid step inside the church. And the preacher comes to him and he says, "Put that music down. Just turn your back on the music and come in here and follow the Lord. And you're playing the devil's music. Put that devil's guitar down," and like that. And then it just shows him standing there with these bleeding scratches. Everybody in church is in white. The preacher's in all black. He's in this dandy kind of suit. Oh, yeah. And that part. Can I just mention how the fashions in the movie and to have had the Met Gala recognize the dandy tailoring that Black people created and employed during their existence, even in times of oppression, being represented, even if it was a mass ritual, just to be recognized and like that and have a nod like that, even if it was so they could get some more ideas for what they can do. Yeah, but still, to be recognized like that is such an honor. I'm almost like, did Michael B. Jordan and Anna Wintour have a talk about this being the dandy Met Gala and the darn Sinners opening the same month? Very interesting, the timing. So you haven't seen the movie yet? Ooh, you need to go see it. If you, it's not too horror filled, like if you're scared of horror movies. And some people say you feel like you brought something home, and it could be a portal or, you know, it's demonic or whatever. But you know, I actually, there was this movie that was recently, what was it called? The Deception. What was that movie? Darn. And the lady with the green eyes was in the house. Lady in Haunted House. Was it Enola? No, it wasn't. And who was in that movie? Glenn Close played the mom in that movie. Yeah, here it is. Lee Daniels. What was the name of that movie? Deliverance. Oh my gosh. Now, the Deliverance, I was kind of spooked a couple of days in a different way after that movie. And even the actors of that movie said that they had to cleanse after that movie. But Sinners, I just feel like the symbology and the imagery was trying to like give an overall message of experience. And I really appreciated it. It hit on religion, it hit on white deity, it hit on Christianity specifically, the proximity to whiteness lie, um, meaning that it colonization, gentrification, um, social conversations like lateral violence. We were talking about lateral violence here the other day, and that's when communities kind of do an infighting kind of thing. Um, and then I'm always talking about the phenomenon of where, in the midst of trouble, people will look around and look for a black person to like blame, in this case, sacrifice. Um, the myth of the model minority and the placement of people who seem lateral to us, yet will are only there to get dollars from us and not really. Anyway, it gets deep. It gets deep. But it's all just in a movie, right? So the man, he's in the church, and he's standing there with the neck of the guitar and the head of the guitar and just shaking. And he never answers the preacher. And then it pans out and it says, one day earlier. So right there is the first message. Right there is the first message to me. How everything can just happen in a day. Yeah, you should go with someone. Like I went with someone, but I wasn't even that scared. I jump scare easy, but I wasn't even that scared. I was so intrigued. I wasn't really that scared. And then plus, like, vampire movies, it's kind of like John Wick. Vampire movies and John Wick, you're expecting lots of bullets. In vampire movies, you're just expecting lots of uh, quick movements by the vampires, red eyes, and some neck biting blood. So it wasn't like scary like that. Um, so anyway, so then it goes to one day earlier, and then it shows these two brothers, Michael B. Jordan and Michael B. Jordan, um, and they are driving up in this car, and they're twins, and one's kind of in a red, one kind of in a blue. One likes his hat, you can see in this picture. And here, let's show this picture. So up top we have the two brothers characters, and then Mary is the white looking woman on top, and then we have Annie, second row, far left, and then we have, what was his name? Cheesesteak, cheddar steak, darn, I forget his name already. And then we have Grace and Perline. And I never really learned these two vamps names, not really, but they were like you know they were in the movie but not of the movie, so to speak. Anyway, um I love a good old movie like what was that, Freaky Friday. Anybody see the original Freaky Friday? I did. Anybody see that Pollyanna movie from back in the day when the twins um were played by that little girl and she wanted her parents to get back together? All I'm saying is, I love a good twin movie. And it's really good when a person can play twins so good. Michael B. Jordan did not disappoint in this role as twins. One twin was, even though they were both hardcore, one twin was kind of more hardcore in a different way. Like he'll shoot you, and the other one will think and then shoot you. You know, one shoots first and asks questions later, and the other one asks questions and then he'll still shoot your ass. So, yeah, so that's kind of like how they were. And then Haley Mills, yes, Miss Kiki, thanks for coming through. Yes, Haley Mills, yes, remember her back in the day? I used to love those movies. Somebody needs to do it with some little black girls, do it with some little Chinese girls, some little Mexican girls. They need, or some little Mexican boys, or like everybody needs their representation of this the twin hype movie thing. Because I love a good twin movie. Even Jean-Claude Van Damme played a freaking twin to himself in one of his movies. You know what I mean? Okay. Temps to plummet on Sunday. 2.9 magnitude earthquake hits San Francisco. I didn't feel it. I didn't feel it. Love the Parent Trap. Yep, Lindsay Lohan was in the remake. Haley Mills was in the original. So, uh-oh. I don't want you popping up right now. Get off here. A lot of races could use that movie for fun for their youth. I feel like, yeah, that was such a fun-loving movie. Very cute. Very cute. And so anyway, so he played the twins very well. And then we have Mary, who was played by another Haley. Oh, no, that is Haley Mills, the white lady. Even though I don't know if she's white or not, I'm not sure. Let's look her up. Let me Google. Is Haley Mills white or is she playing black? Let's see. Haley Mills. Black? No, that Haley Mills isn't. No, no, no. I'm talking about the one in, I think the white girl in Sinners is a Haley also. Sinners, Mary. I had that tab open, but of course it's closed. Yeah, Haley Steinfeld is playing Sinners, Mary role. And, but is she black? Let's see. Because she's playing a lady who is black but passes for white in the movie. And the brothers were both at one time her love interest, unless I'm just confused and he took his hat off in a scene and I thought it was the same twin. But I'm pretty sure she was she was smashing both of those fools. But more so one than the other. Let's see. So her name is Haley Steinfeld. American. Let's see. Parents, siblings, American. Sherry Steinfeld. And Peter Steinfeld. Both very white. So she's a white girl. She played the heck out of that passing role. Has anybody ever seen the movie The Imitation of Life? Yes. Yes. So in The Imitation of Life, it's a famous movie about this light-skinned black lady who passed for white her entire life. And then when her mom died, she's like, that's my mama. That's my mama, Lana Turner. Yep. Lana Turner, a single white mother who dreams of being on Broadway, has a chance encounter with uh, Juanita Moore, a black widow, Annie becomes the caretaker of Laura's daughter, Susie, Sandra D., while Laura pursues her career. Both women deal. Is that the one? Yeah. And it had Juanita Moore was in it, Lana Turner, Sandra D. It was so good, you guys. It was made in 1959. Basically loosed on reality. So, yeah, so it was kind of like that character was Mary's character, was like the lady in the Imitation of Life, where she passed and she could walk freely in the black neighborhoods, no problem. We not messing with people. I don't know why the lie is that we be messing with the people. No, they be feeling safe around us. The people be telling them, if you lost, go find the black people because they'll help you. Okay, they will not kidnap you. We're not trying to have no extra mouths to feed like that. Okay, I guess that's what they thinking. I don't know. I don't know. Anyway, so she plays a white passing black girl who grew up with the twins. Her mother raised them after their mama died and after one of the twins had killed the dad for beating on him. And so after they were left with no one, her mother raised them. And then she wanted to be with them, but they were like, no, you're safer going and marrying this white boy. So she actually, when we meet her at the train station in the morning, she's getting ready to get on the train and go back to where she came from to go be with her white man. And the farm that they get to have is because nobody over there knows she black. And she gets off the train and is running after, nose wide open after the twins. Okay, so that's Mary. So then the twins have come down from Chicago and they had hit a truck full of contraband, such as Italian wine and Irish beer, and of course, guns. And they stopped and bought a barn, like mill barn building property from this boss hog type white man when they first get to town. And there's a lot of coded messaging in there, and he's all calling them boys. And one comes up behind him like they could have just snaked him right there, but no, they didn't do it. They paid him and told him if him or any of his friends or the clan comes over there on their property, they're marked. It's over for them. They better stay that way. So he's like, the clan? Nobody's in the clan anymore. Okay, so he leaves. So then um, it shows the same fella who had pulled up to the church, going and getting up in the morning, reaching under his bed, and something's missing. And he goes to the church and finds his daddy and his guitar. And he's like, Dad, I'm taking the guitar. I'm leaving. I'll be back. And his dad is giving the razzmatazz and he wants him to be a preacher. Here, read the word. And he's like, okay, fine. I read it. I'm leaving. I've been working in the fields all week. I'm going to play the guitar with my people. So he leaves his dad, gets in the car with the two twins, and they're like, you need to come play at the juke joint. So then they end up the whole morning. It's like gathering the band of merry men, right? So they picked up Sammy, who's actually not even pictured in this one. Let's get a picture of Sammy. So Sammy, where do you go, Sammy? So he's up here. So that's Ryan Coogler. And then it has Michael B. Jordan. And then the guy with the red shirt right here, that he played the character Sammy. So he's the main male lead. He also has the rifle right here um, in the bottom picture when they're in the standoff pose down here. And where else is he? Oh, and he's down here in the hat. Anyway, so he's the main character who, when he's singing and playing the guitar, people are transcended in a way, and they are able to like heal. And oh yeah, I forgot to tell you, the movie opens with like these legends of, okay, if a person can sing, it's said to do this in this culture. If a person can play the music, it's said to do this in that culture. But in the Black culture, if you can do this, then it's like healing and it's great and you have power, right? So then he's singing. So he's the singer. Sammy sings, and then this thing falls out of the heavens. A light happens, and this thing falls out of the heavens, and it's on fire, like when the Terminator fell from the sky in the beginning of the Terminator movie, remember? But this dude's not naked. He like just drops down in the time clothes that he's supposed to be in, but he's not naked. But he's all roughed up from dropping through the atmosphere, I guess. And to me, that symbolized a lot. So we're going to get into that because I was really intrigued with a lot of different things in the movie. And that scene in particular spoke to me because because the way that white deities ultimately doom indigenous cultures was deep. I don't know if anybody else got that message, but I did. Let's see. Let's go here. And the blues. Ooh. There, let's go back here. There we go. Okay. So when he dropped out of the sky, it was, I don't know how to really say it. I don't want to offend people, but that was kind of what I got from it was, yes. So I was like, does the vampires fall from heaven in the first scene symbolize the impending doom of Black people's praying to white deities along, or was it just to symbolize that the vampire, who is the only white character in the movie initially, was this to be sorry. Was it perhaps trying to be like a Lucifer type thing? I am going to drop the link for the people who want to come up because that way I can get some other perspectives and points of views on the movie Sinners, because I'm thinking it was really good and I want to talk about it. So let me say, am I here? So yeah, so was it just a symbol of the impending doom of Black people praying to a white deity, or was it to symbolize like it was like more of a fallen angel type of thing? And on the surface, the scene clearly mirrors a Lucifer myth, right? A being of light cast down from the heavens, bearing beauty. So the thing was cute. It had charisma and a message of unity and enlightenment, but ultimately brings chaos, temptation, and destruction. This positions the lead vampire Remnick as a Lucifer figure. He doesn't arrive snarling. He arrives glowing and charming and loving, but that's the point. He seduces before he devours. And it seems like Ryan Coogler might be asking, what if the devil doesn't come to destroy your faith, but to hijack it? You know? As far as white deity, thanks for being here, Mamere and Bianca. Um, Now, the white deity part, I've always felt like praying to, white Jesus could be part of the problem. Why it's been 450 years, like it's not paying attention over there. It's not for us, by us. It's given to us by an oppressor and who's whipping us and killing us and taking our children and raping our women and separating our families and marking our sons while they're praying from this Bible. Literally. Remember in the movie Django, like the overseer would be leaving flesh open wounds on backs while reading the Bible? Yeah. Telling them to turn the other cheek. And it was a sin to rise up against their master. Yeah. So the white deity and doom of praying to a false god, it feels like I have a deeper question of getting into the film's spiritual critique and the idea of Black people who have been taught to worship a white image of divinity are unknowing praying to our own destruction. And the vampires descending from a white light in the sky, surrounded by choral music and a soft, oh, it feels biblical, and it's all a deception and it's perversion of a revelation. And this evokes real world dynamics. Centuries of enslaved Africans being forced to adapt to Christianity under white supremacy. That's happened, you guys. And churches that taught obedience to suffering as godliness. That happens, you guys. The idea that whiteness is divine and therefore should be obeyed, trusted, and let in. That's another deep message of this movie, is that you have to literally invite the evil into your house. If you don't invite it in, then you're safe. As long as you don't invite it in, then you're safe. And that brings me to be in this world, but not of it, right? So as long as you don't let it in, you're okay. But it begs to get in because it wants access to the commodity that is Blackness. You understand? So when the vampires fall from heaven, Ryan Coogler might be posing a devastating question. What if the God that you've been trained to wait for is actually the one feeding on you? That's deep. Isn't that deep? Because on level 8, they talk about, me and my level 8, you guys, for any newbies in the house. If I ever refer to level 8, it means the conspiracy theory level. And on level 8, one might say that the idea of vampirism and Christianity can seem somewhat exactly what it needs to be called. you know, you go into indigenous cultures and you preach this, oh, love and light. And before you know it, all the kids have freaking smallpox because you wanted to try a vaccine and it gets out of control. And there's another village dead, but you just move on to the next village. And you get in under the same guise of, oh, we're here with white Jesus to make everything better. So I don't know. I feel like in this day and age, we really need to be super careful about who we're praying to and what we're praying to, and name it specifically and don't be general, especially in prayer, because that's super specific. So we could interpret the opening moment that I described where he falls from the sky and it appears like, because the mere fact that he falls down from the sky implies angelic, implies of heaven. Anybody who watches Handmaid's Tale knows, like, your first name is of and your last name is the dude that's you're held down for. So like if the master of the house is named Fred, then your first name is Of, and they call you Of Fred. Or if the guy's name is Jeremiah, then you're Of Jeremiah. And so you would think that it's of heaven, the mere fact that this thing is falling from the sky, right? So the visual is a white light descending from the sky. The symbolic meaning is false divinity and colonial religion. The visual is vampires arriving with tenderness and unity talk, because they literally stand outside the juke joint and are like, won't y'all let us in? We sure love your music. It sounds so good in there, and just like ooey gooey niceness, trying to get in and settle in and be invited in because they need to be invited in order to destroy. So that's white saviorism and the missionary colonialism. And then we have the visual of Black folks looking up. Like when you see this, it's like looking up. And so that's spiritual indoctrination along with some theological vulnerability. What follows is seduction, betrayal, and feeding, and the divinity becomes whitewashed. So the scene is asking, what happens when a people's longing for salvation is so strong they mistake colonizers for angels? Interesting. Coogler doesn't just show evil as something that sneaks in from the shadows. He shows it's often welcome through the front door because it wears the mask of God, love, light, and love. God, light, and love. Isn't that interesting? To go a little further into my theory, this is all allegedly, in my opinion, for entertainment purposes. This is just like what I came away with from the movie. So I was feeling also like the vampires could be a symbol of colonizers, gentrification, and the imagery of seeing the vampires. There's a scene where after Coogler shows the angel fall from the sky, he arrives at this house and he's asking to get let in. And right after he gets there, some Indians come and they're like, oh, you have somebody here who's not what you think. You need to let us handle it before dark. And the lady, of course, they have a Klan hood on their bed. When they open the door, there's like Klan outfits inside these people's house. So they're like, okay, you're on your own. And the Indians leave everybody to their own devices in the movie. But they did come to help, and they knew when he dropped out of the sky. They were like freaking vampire hunters, I guess. And they knew when his ass dropped out of the sky and went and knocked right on the door. And there was no sign that he could have dropped out of the sky there unless you know how to see that stuff. So the vampire arrives at the house, and while she's answering the door to the Indians, she goes back and was like, oh, it was the Indians that you said was after you. And she opens the door to where she thinks her husband and the visitor are, and her husband's laying in a pool of blood, and the guy is sitting in a rocking chair with blood all over, and he's like, oh, he'll be up in a minute. He's just resting, because he knows he turned the guy into a vampire. And then they all go over to the juke joint. After they've gathered the merry men, they get the Italian wine and the Irish beer all inside the juke joint. He goes and visits Annie, who's the Black lady right here, who is the love interest of one of the twins. And he goes in there with Annie, and Callie Nola, yay, come through, girl.
Hey, I've never used Rescreen before.
Here
I've never
we
used
are.
Rescreen
Hi.
before. So
Hi. How are
okay.
you?
This is interesting. I just wanted to see how Rescreen works, and I actually did finally watch the movie.
Yeah. I'm glad you're up here. I was just getting into like the first thoughts of like even the opening scenes. I'm kind of all over the place just in the setup of like Rennick and things like that. But it
Mm-hmm.
did the symbolism and the imagery was so fascinating and intriguing. And wow, I just really feel like there's so many messages in here about religion, colonialism, gentrification, white Christianity, separation, minority myth, lateral violence, like so many different messages all
Oh
in this
yeah.
movie. And it's fascinating to me. So right now, I'm to the point of when Rennick drops from the sky, I'm seeing it as a sign that he's obviously Lucifer, fallen angel type thing. And also, I feel like it was a visualized scene of the impending doom of a white deity for blackness. So
Well,
I was feeling like that was what I got from it. What did you get from like
Well,
that?
there's another layer to this, and it's kind of, and I think that this is a part that people are kind of missing. There was a specific reason why he was Irish. And it's sort of like this whole POC thing. Like, oh,
Mhm.
I'm oppressed like you. Wink,
Right,
wink.
right,
You
right.
know what I mean?
Yeah,
And that's and that was, and I think that that was done on purpose because the vampire could have just been a regular white dude. He didn't need to be Irish. He didn't need to be another quote unquote oppressed person.
right.
So I felt like there are a lot of things that are layered deep into this that a lot of people won't get, and maybe it's done on purpose to not offend people. But
Yeah,
I definitely saw it where it's kind of like this person comes in who, under the guise of, yeah, we're all oppressed, and then they end up like taking over all your stuff, you
yeah.
know.
So that to me
Yeah.
is colonization. That addresses my colonialization, that colonization aspect about you come in and instead of become part of what's already there, you come in and destroy it, price it out, take it
Hmm.
over, give it smallpox, and whitewash that shit like you invented it. You know what I mean? So that's that kind of energy.
Well, I kind of feel like it's another layer because when we think of colonization, we think of white people doing this. We don't see it as these other people that we are told that are being oppressed just like we are, also coming in and doing the same thing.
You're right. Well, that's
With
the lateral
yeah.
violence thing that I was touching on too. One of my Curvies mentioned it the other day. They call it lateral violence in their community, in the indigenous community, I believe in Canada. So lateral violence is kind of like, infighting among the minorities. And Grace was that character too. Rennick was the Irish version of that character because the signs did used to say no dogs, no blacks, no Irish was
Mm-hmm.
the bottom, you know? And so
Mm-hmm.
that was the lateral violence I think that you're touching on right now, where it's the infighting among the air quotes POC.
Well, the message that I also got from that is that anyone who isn't you isn't you. Like even with I think what's her
Ooh.
name, Mary, which the logistics of someone being an octoroon has never made any sense to me. Because I'm gonna tell you why. If one drop makes you black, then your parent is black. So there would be no identity of being an octoroon. You would just be a black person. So that to me, I think is something I would have to really research more. But I feel like this is a part of history that we're misunderstanding and we're missing something because it doesn't make any sense. If
I I
my
feel like
my
I feel like
yeah.
octoroons definitely existed. I get your logic about the one drop per
Yeah,
se,
you understand what I'm
but
saying? If my
but
dad
their ignorance
is
goes by visuals. So they say one thing, and in true colonizer fashion, they do another. So they say if you have one drop, you're black. But if you look white, then you're the imitation of life, and you can pass in our neighborhoods, in our societies until we have other use for you.
well, I get what you're saying, but this is my whole thing, and this is I've wondered this ever since I ever heard about this in junior high school.
Okay.
If my dad is biracial or what have you, and one drop makes you black, then he's black. And then therefore I would be black. So this whole thing of someone being an octoroon, what I'm saying is when I'm finding with history, since I've been off from work and I've had time to start like researching some of these things, when things don't quite make sense, it's because they didn't quite happen that way. And we're sort of like, as time has gone on, we've like oversimplified them.
Yeah.
So that's my whole thing with her. She would just be a black person. She would just be like, no, I'm black. I'm just really like, or whatever. If someone asked her, or she would just say, I'm black. I'm not gonna lie. She is literally white passing. But I actually know two women that kind of look like Robin Dixon, and they have black parents, but they kind of look like an ancestor.
Right.
And if someone says something, they just go, no, I'm black. It's never any more, because that's, you know what I mean? Because if we're going by the one drop rule in this time period, which I'm assuming that they had in Mississippi, because the one drop rule didn't even exist in every state.
Right.
But Mississippi is very racist because it has a large black population. So I'm just going to assume that it existed in Mississippi. My family is from the other side, so our laws are a little bit different, even though we're right across the bridge. So I'm just going to assume that Mary would have just been a black person. You know what I mean? Like that logistics of that. And I've seen it in other movies too. One movie I've seen it where the woman was actually basically separated from her entire family. But in this case, she's actually going back to a place where people know her. So
right, it looked
she
like
would have just been a black person there.
Well, she was just a black person in the town.
Yeah.
She was, but it showed her getting on a train, saw the twins and got off a train. So that's implied to me she was about to go back to the place where she passes it as white, saw the twins, got caught up. But she was getting on the train to go to her white life. And like you just said, she was in the place where she could be black.
Well, I think what I'm trying to say is this. I don't think the issue of her being any sort of octoroon would have. Well, first of all, how did this? Because I think they say her dad was black. How was her dad being able to marry a white woman? Like, this is what I'm saying. Like the logistics of this octoroon identity. When I don't know. Obviously, I wasn't born then. But when I've seen it in movies, it kind of doesn't make sense. Because it would have to be something that you would find out about after the fact. Like, say I thought I was white, and then in my 40s or 50s, I find out that my grandfather was black. It would have to work in that way, because if my dad is a mixed race man, how could he have then married a white woman if we were living in a state where this one drop rule was a thing?
Well, maybe it was kind of like how you say people are cousins, but
yeah.
Maybe they just called each other husband and wife. But like you said, they wouldn't have not been able to be married or be together.
No, he was a pastor though. So that's what I'm saying. There's a little bit of, and again, this is a movie, so sometimes things in movies don't quite make sense. You know what I mean? But I did like the nod of when when they said that there are no Indians here. Are you sure they weren't just some light-skinned N-words? Because I felt like there were little nods to sort of the truth.
Yes.
I like the nod to it being an all black owned town up the river, because Buddy Guy actually played the older version of the cousin, and he is from down the river from our town. And I will tell you that I had this conversation with my mom, and she said I never even heard of a Chinese person until I came to Los Angeles. That's how black our town is.
Wow.
Even now in 2025, it's gone up. Actually, it used to be, I think, 88%. Now it's like 92% black, because a lot of people have moved back because everything's so expensive.
Yeah.
So that's how black our town is. And we were not even in the high end black town. On the Mississippi side, I think it was Mount something, there was like a wealthy Black town that existed in that time. And I think that's where their family is originally from. The preacher, you know, the twins' dad, they're originally from this wealthy Black town. I think
Oh.
it's called Mount something. They mention it very briefly. So it's like, we just get like one line in the movie, because to me, my family's from the Louisiana side. So this thing with these Chinese people owning these stores in that time period,
Yeah.
I literally never heard of this until this movie.
Right.
I thought it was a made
Yeah.
up
Well, the
thing.
Delta, they did have a lot of Chinese that came to do the railroad stuff, and they were integrated into our communities, and even more so than Mexicans, even though tamales came out a little later, and that was like a fusion of both. Because you'll find tamales in the South, and it's from Mexicans being down there too.
No, it's not. But I don't want to get it. I don't want to get into all of that. That's like a whole rabbit hole. But I will say that the tamales were already there. And you got to remember, there were Black people that were Mexicans in Mexico. There's a part of Mexico that sits on the Gulf, just like Louisiana. So there were people, until they started having all of these wars and borders and stuff.
But if you're Mexican, then you're Black Mexican. So that means that if you were Black, so if you were Black and Mexican in the South, then you're Mexican in the South too, just like you're Black in the South. You can be two things at once. So like that part.
Well, there was no Mexico
because a lot of people were very upset. There's a lot of tweets and TikToks about the lack of representation for the Latino community in the movie. They were quite upset on the TikTok.
I can only speak to my side, which is the Louisiana side of the Delta. With the exception of, and I don't even think this started into the 60s, of them doing like a traveling rodeo, they were not there. I think that people kind of think that we live in the world that we live in now, where we're living in this global society. No, people lived in their town, and they lived in their town, and they were in an isolated community.
Right.
So, like I said, my mom, she was like literally, until she moved here in the early 70s, she lived in Los Angeles for a while when she was married to my dad before I was born. She had never heard of a Chinese person. Never met one, never heard of it, nothing. Like, there was a Black family that owned the market, and then there was a big like supermarket that eventually opened up, which was a Piggly Wiggly.
There actually, you know, in the 1930s, there was quite a large group of Mexicans that actually picked cotton in the Delta. So yeah.
We never, like I said, you lived in
your town, right?
Your town, like in your area. I can only tell you about where my family was from. It was all Black people, and it was some white, a few white. The white people were in the minority. There, you know, of course, they owned businesses and things like that too. But we also had, my uncle he had a huge acres and acres of cotton.
Yeah. Wasn't that beautiful? I mean, the history, the legacy of cotton fields for us is so deplorable and disgusting. Yet, just that imagery in the film was so breathtaking and beautiful.
The cinematography is beautiful. I've seen them in person, but I have to say I love the cinematography in this movie. Was very beautiful. But I also kind of feel like I wish that we had seen this movie in the Black town. Now, they didn't have to let the vampires destroy the town. It could have just been that jig joint. But I wish that we have just had seen that Black town. I wish that we would have been able to see us owning cotton fields, owning the stores, owning the fishing boats.
I don't know. This was a horror movie, Callie. Callie, you asking a lot of Ryan. This was a horror movie. And that would have actually been the real horror to some white people, was all them Black people thriving. You're right. They could have added it.
No, but you know what, Curves? It was reality. I think that sometimes we think of history in absolutes. And I'm gonna be honest, I do think that sometimes we end up co-opting other people's stories that didn't actually happen to our families personally.
Yeah,
Because even
yeah.
during bondage, there were over 300,000 free Black people.
Right.
So
And
it's
yeah,
like, where are those people's stories? You
exactly. And
know?
the indigenous Black people, because we were already here with the Urgens along, and then some free Black people came, and then some slaves came.
Well, I think that sort of line that he put in the movie was a little bit of his way of doing a shout out to us, saying like, you know, you sure there's one just some light skin in words? I think that was his way of going wink, wink. You know, yeah,
That was hilarious when he said that.
yeah. I think
Uh,
that was purposely put in the movie as a little bit of a like a shout out, like we know the truth. But you know, it's and I understand like it's a horror movie. Now as far as the horror element of it, I have to be honest, I'm a little spoiled because I watched Supernatural for many many years, so the way the vampires kind of worked and everything was a little weird. That part of the movie was a little strange, and I also didn't know if the guitar was supposed to be magical or if Sammy had a magical gift with his music. I didn't quite know if there was something supernatural about
okay, so the
Sammy.
film opened. Did you see it from the very, very, very
Yes.
beginning? Because it opened with words talking about the different cultures and people with various musical gifts and what it meant within that culture, and how particular people, especially in the Black culture, if they had a musical gift like singing, then this, and this, and they could heal. And then it went to Sammy. So I was,
Yeah, so that's why
yeah.
it's like
So
a
I was like, I
high.
felt like his natural gift of his voice was the gift. But then the guitar was from the twins, and that also ended up being a gift. But his voice is why the demon fell from heaven. He said he heard him singing.
Mm, it's so hard for me to get the vampire lore that I already know out of my
Out of
head
your
because
head,
I kind
yeah.
of feel like that vampire was running around the area, like going from place to place, and he kind of like happens upon these people because he sees people enjoying their lives.
Right, right.
You
Let's get
know?
this real quick. Let me tell the people who might not know. So we're talking about sinners, and this is an open panel. I did drop the link. I want to hear other people's points of views also. I was just before you got up here, Callie, about to get into the whole colonizer, gentrification, vampire connection to me. And so I want to touch on that real quick. So the vampire trio doesn't just feed, they arrive, charm, seduce, destroy, and then move on, right? The entire cycle mirrors the mechanics of both historical colonization and modern gentrification. The colonization is entering into a space under the guise of enlightenment, bringing religion or civilization to but then you drain life, labor, and culture from it. Under gentrification, you come to a neighborhood praising its grit and culture, but ultimately displace and gut every community member that gave it soul. So the vampires, just like them, they don't just kill individuals, they erode the cultural ecosystem
Mm-hmm.
of the town and the juke joint and its people by proxy. Let's look at the juke joint for a second, because when the demons first arrive at the juke joint, I was mesmerized at how they saw it, Callie. They pull up to the juke joint and see it already on fire. They
Yeah,
see it
exactly. Like,
already destroyed.
I'm
They
gonna
see it
destroy this.
already like
Yeah.
dead. They see it the way they're going to leave it. And that was prolific to me because these fucking colonizers and gentrifiers know exactly what the fuck they're doing. They're not really, they already know they're not coming to make shit better. Just like these vampires, they're not coming to make shit better. They're coming to destroy that shit and see their finished product upon entry into the Black space, the Black culture in this case. So the moment is referenced when the vampires first arrive and they see the juke joint in flames and in physical destruction. And it's a vision and it's a critical moment because it's not just foreshadowing. It's intentional pre-knowledge. They know they'll cause devastation. They know they'll steal the spirit and art from
Mm-hmm.
that place. They know they'll break communal bonds and kill people. They know they're only going to leave murder, death, kill, and ash. But just like colonizers and gentrifiers, they don't give a fuck because the destruction is part of the plan. It's not a side effect, it's the objective. And notice the demons, the vampires, gentrifiers, and colonizers never pretend that they're going to improve nothing. They don't ever pretend. They just use words. They're like, oh, let's revitalize. But that's an opportunity zone. That's their word for gut this
Mm-hmm.
shit. You know what I mean? And so we're helping the area grow for them. You know, they're feed off destruction, literally and figuratively, and it's parasites with poetry. What do you think about that?
Oh, well, I thought it was really deep going back to what I was saying earlier. Look at the vampires that they chose. They chose one vampire that would have been considered a member of another oppressed group and two very poor class white American people.
Mm-hmm.
These were not the wealthy, elite, clear people. I don't want to keep
Right.
saying white because I don't want to get you
Right.
flagged. That you would think that would come and destroy your community.
Right.
These are people that you might think, oh my God, they're just like me. And then the person that went out to talk to them was a woman who was, let's just be honest, realistically, she's a white woman. I mean, like, we can say whatever we want to say, but she, you know what I mean? Like, she identified with them in some way and she went out to talk to them.
Yeah.
And then the woman, no black person did. And the woman who opens the door is an Asian woman.
Yeah. Oh
So
my God.
I
We will
really
get to
think
her.
that he was trying to send some messages to the people that were able to get it without offending people. Because I picked up on four things in this movie that I think a lot of people, if they're not very conscious,
Yeah.
it would have just went right past them.
Yeah. Definitely. Definitely.
Yeah.
So, so in the film, when we see the vampires seduced with talks of peace and love and oneness and friendship, while they're playing that corny ass music, that the developer would offer revitalization, while the black joy space is being invaded. In real life, it's equivalent to cultural displacement. When the elders are ignored and pushed out in the film, it's just like when the longtime residents are priced out of their communities. When the juke joint is destroyed, it's just like how even right now historical landmarks are being raised for different types of honoring, things that might not be the best thing, but they're either raised or destroyed, you know? And so they love the culture but destroy it, and love the vibe but try to erase it. It's so
Well,
crazy.
they want to suck it and take it for themselves, which is what the vampire was doing. I
Mm-hmm.
thought it was very clever. For me, this movie was, like I said, it was a little bit difficult to watch because I literally come from this culture. My uncle owned a jit joint to probably about 2015. It's actually pretty famous. It's in songs. There's songs about my aunt.
Yeah.
My family is very protective, so I can't say their names, but yeah, this is my uncle was in this business for decades. This is my other uncle, not the one that owned all the land. This is my other side of the family.
Yeah.
So this is how I kind of sort of, you know what I mean? I don't need a movie to tell me what was going on with these people because my grandfather was born in 1911. So
Did he
this
ever
was his
talk anything
era.
about vampires? Did your grandpa ever encounter any vampires?
No, but my grandmother who told me to never fear the dead. And
Oh.
she was a woman who suffered from mental illness, but now that I'm older, I think that she could just see
See
spirits.
stuff, yeah.
Yeah. So, and I wish I would have
Wow.
known that when she was still here. I wish I would have understood that.
Yeah.
But that
Well,
was something that she would always tell me, like, you should never fear the dead. And I would, and now I see, now I feel that she was telling me this because she could probably see them.
yeah. That's
So
deep.
yeah.
For anybody that doesn't know, a juke joint is a sacred space. It's a living organism. It isn't just a building, it's an altar, the symbol of Black resistance, joy, and it's integral to the community's healing. Um, it's cultural continuity, and that it's a place of like rebirth and community building and all different kinds of stuff. Juke joints were the biz. And you know what I really liked? Unknown caller. Was when it looked like that picture from JJ,
Oh
Good
yeah, yeah.
Times.
What is the
Yeah,
name of that artist? He's a
I don't
very,
know. The
very
Good
famous
Times
artist.
painting. Here, let me look it up. The Good Times. Because
Yeah, because
somebody
I
just
think
bought
Eddie
that. Didn't
Murphy
somebody?
owned one of those paintings, and I think he sold it for $20 or $40 million, something like
Yeah, the
that.
Good Times painting. What's it called?
Yeah, but they definitely. I
The
love. First of
Ernie
all, can I just
Barnes.
say I don't know who the artist is who did all of the artwork. I should look them up because
Yeah,
kudos to
Ernie
them. They did
Barnes.
an amazing job.
Sugar Shack. It was called the Sugar Shack by
Yeah.
Ernie Barnes. Yeah. So he wanted it to mimic that. I heard that in a interview that he actually did that with intention on purpose because
Oh,
that
they're
picture
definitely
was
gonna
famous.
win an Oscar for cinematography.
Well,
And
I
I
don't
don't
know.
know,
Do you think they didn't give Denzel nothing?
no, for cinematography, for the cinematography. I don't know if there's any Oscar that you can get for the actual artwork, but I thought all of the artwork was beautiful. Like I live near a big digital billboard, and
Uh,
every time I would see the center's ad, I mean, it would just grab me. Like visually, they did such a great job. It is a vampire movie, so I agree with you. They're probably not going to be giving people awards for a vampire movie,
yeah,
other than cinematography. I'm pretty sure they're gonna get this because the movie. The movie was beautifully done.
yeah. And it's made the top
Yeah.
list, the top grossing list, like the top five right now of horror films ever made so far. And it just came out and it's already in the top grossing horror films list. And then you know he has that good deal where he gets ownership rights back after 25 years. So right when it's time to become a cult classic, the ownership reverts back to Ryan Coogler. So
Oh
that's
yeah,
a
this
big
is
step.
definitely gonna be a cult classic. And like I said, I know a lot of people kind of watched this movie and they really didn't sort of pick up on the things that I picked up. Like they didn't really up on why they made these specific three people the vampires, why they made these be the people that brought the vampires in. And you know, there's just so much in this movie. It's just in this little
Yeah,
vampire movie. It's just so interesting.
so crazy. Yeah,
Yeah, and also the fact that Buddy Guy is a real blues legend that played the older version of Sammy, that actually is from a town in the Delta. It's not my town, but it is down the river. So I do kind of feel like that up the river comment might have been a shout out to us.
yeah,
And then they also mentioned the affluent, really affluent black town, which was in Mississippi. I think it was called Mount something. But these people lived in like big 2-story homes, like
yeah.
everything was black owned. You know, we still
Nice.
had some white people in our town. It wasn't everything was not black owned, but in that town
Now,
it was.
the white people in your town, do you feel like they were undercover KKK?
The undercover.
Oh, you're like overcover. You're like, you mean, you're like, nope, hood's on in the
Okay,
daylight.
this is the thing. I don't want people Googling me because it's not me that I'm worried about. I'm more worried about my family, especially, my mom,
Yeah,
because, they're elderly and stuff. But I will say I have members of my family that were unalived and documented civil rights unalive. I mean, there's cases and
yeah.
everything. I'm trying
Bless your
to,
family for fighting,
you know what I mean? I
you
would like to actually see if I can get together with some of my cousins and maybe do a documentary. But yeah, it's so funny because our town, it was almost kind of like more similar to what life would be like in the modern day. Like I had one uncle who was wealthy and he actually inherited the money from the land, which generated the money from my great grandfather.
know.
These are
Hmm.
all black men. They're not biracial or anything like that. These are black men. that owned
Yeah.
acres and acres of cotton.
Yeah.
Then I had
So did they
another.
get that through sharecropping and then bought it out?
I'm
Or
just
were
gonna
they
be honest.
freedmen that already
I'm
owned
gonna
it,
be honest
didn't
with
lose
you.
their land?
No, I know a lot of people may not be in a place where they have the information to understand that, but essentially we're Indians. So
Okay.
we already had
You already had your
these
land and got to
things
keep it. Yes,
before
yes,
these people got off this boat and took over this
yes. So
country.
you're like your family was
Yeah,
lucky
yeah,
enough to
yeah.
experience keeping a portion of what they had before the people came off the
Well,
Mayflowers.
the land is no longer being farmed. I'm not a direct heir to it.
Yeah.
Is because, like I said, this was my uncle, and the money goes through the oldest male child. My grandmother was a daughter's, like she didn't inherit these things. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like
Yes.
sons got it.
Yeah, ladies
But
couldn't even have freaking bank accounts until 1970 or some shit.
yeah, but I mean, I am a direct descendant of that family in certain parts of Louisiana. I can drop that name if I want to. You know
Yeah,
what I
nice,
mean?
nice. That's good. You know, that's
But
actually a beautiful gift too, is knowing that
yeah.
heritage for yourself. A lot of people like, have to depend on things that are currently going bankrupt to even get an inkling of what tree to bark up. So anyway, let's get back to this show. So I wanted to look at how the characters, um, the Smoke, Stack, Mary, Annie, Grace, Bow, Perline, and the devils, like what did they represent as far as the seven deadly sins? I've been seeing a lot of that run around.
Hmm.
So you want to give me what you think any of these people's which deadly sin you think these people might have represented? Let's put it like this.
Well, Perline is the most obvious adultery.
Hmm.
And
But a
then,
Perline, oh yeah, adultery, because she was
yeah,
like
she's
half
the most
married.
obvious of the deadly sins.
Yes.
I kind of, you know what? I kind of feel like everybody's just kind of sinning, but I can't. Well, I think Smoke and Stack, isn't there something about honoring the mother and the father? They had an issue with their father.
Yeah,
And
and
so
one
did
killed their
Sammy.
dad. One
Yeah,
killed
and
their
so
dad.
Sammy also was like rebelling against his
So
father.
murder, greed.
Yeah, greed. Obviously,
Yeah,
they were Smoke and Stack were criminals. Let's just
yeah,
keep it a buck. They were
yeah.
criminals, and then they decide to kind of throw up this fly by night business. This wasn't like,
They were just
oh,
trying
this
to
is their
recoup their
dream.
money.
Yeah, this was
They
just
were pulling a Ozark
yeah.
with liquor that they stole from Chicago. And
Mm-hmm.
Mary put it all, pieced it all together. She's like, you got Italian wine and Irish beer. You stole it from each other. You got them up there fighting, and you're down here trying to get enough money to run. And that's why she even went outside and made friends with the vampires, was trying to allegedly help them. But yeah, so I feel like Mary, do you feel like she was I don't know, I kind of feel like she might have been lust.
Yeah, because I she was only there because she was lusting after this man. And I'm
Uh-huh.
going to be honest, she didn't care about those people's safety at all. She
Not
did
at all.
not care that her being there could potentially put these people in danger because she presents as a white woman.
Right.
Like, and I'm wondering if her whole family passed, and at some point in her life, she found out she had some black in her. Because I'm still not understanding the mom and the dad. It makes me think that the dad was also passing. That's
Yeah.
what it makes me think. And so, therefore, she was like putting everybody in lives in danger. So she just was just lusting after this man, and she didn't
Yeah.
care about nothing else.
Okay.
You have the
So the seven sins are pride, greed, lust, envy, gluttony, wrath, and sloth. Yeah. So
I
I was
don't know.
thinking
Did they
that,
do seven sins? Because when I think, I guess the gluttony would be the vampire, of course.
yeah, for
Eating
sure.
everybody.
Rennick. Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe
Um,
sloth could be laziness, avoidance of work, spiritual apathy. Anybody do that? I kind of feel like that was almost Bo Chow, Grace's husband, the Chinese man, because he was always drunk and he was always like
Oh yeah, yeah,
kind of
yeah.
partying and didn't really want to work. He's like, go get your mom.
Yeah, it was
Yeah,
him. You were right.
yeah.
It was
So maybe
him.
that. Lust was Perlene. Greed is one of the
No, Perlene was
twins.
adultery.
Pride.
Yeah.
Which one I wonder is Pride? Grace was just. Let's just get to Grace. Forget these. Forget the deadly sins. So we picked
Yeah,
this
I
one. Will
wonder
be
if
good.
Grace was the pride because she didn't want to accept what was happening.
Right.
And so I wonder if that's, you would say that that would be her pride, because it was very clear what was happening, and she was like, no, I just don't want to accept this, you know.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I personally would have pushed her out the door, but that's
That's
me.
what I kept. I was yelling it. I
I would
was
have been like,
yelling at the
girl, I
screen.
don't know you
Push
like
that bitch
that.
out. Push that bitch out. I was yelling it. I'm sorry. I'm one of those at the theater. If you heard that, that was me. So now the Asian couple was challenging the model minority myth and also symbolized like that two in flames lover thing, literally by the end when they both set on fire together. But
Yeah.
the inclusion of Grace and Bao, a Chinese American couple, adds a nuanced layer to the film's exploration of race and identity. Their characters are inspired by real life Chinese Delta community, which played a significant role in the Mississippi Delta cultural tapestry by portraying Grace as integral members of the Black community. Now, just as what I noticed was like Bo seemed down with the shits. Bo was like in his element. He was like, my people. Grace seemed resentful, as did her daughter. Seemed kind of like annoyed, resentful, irritated at being in the environment of all that blackness to me. That's what I got from them. But back to the model minority and how Coogler could have been challenging the stereotype of the model minority, highlighting the complexities and intersections between the experiences, the different experiences between minorities in America. I didn't really appreciate how she was willing to, Grace, she was willing to sacrifice the people who were keeping her safe. Is she could have just went outside. She could have literally went outside. She's over there making bombs. We'll go take one of your fucking bombs and go outside. But she invited them in to destroy the people and ultimately herself, because there was hundreds of them. So it wasn't even a logical move. It wasn't even logical. And how is she going to keep her family safe if everybody in there is dead? And it was just like the logic was gone, the selfishness was evident, and it reminded me of the lady who follows you around the freaking beauty supply store talking about you buy.
Well, yeah. This is the 1930s version of that lady.
Mm-hmm.
But first of all, let's be honest. What actually let the vampires come in were the two people that should have never been there in the first place. And so that's
Mary,
why I said he
Mary,
is
and
good.
she's talking
Because,
about Mary and Grace.
yes,
These
he
two
is good because he
people,
layered it in a way where it wouldn't be so knock you over the head that people would get offended and all of this stuff. But he put it in there so that if you are a conscious Black person, you would see it and you would see it right
yes,
away.
yes. And I did. I was like, oh, somebody's getting Emmett Tilled. Keep your head down, boys. Like I was, that's literally because Mary's energy to me also was personified Emmett Till lady energy with the her ignorance of the harm she was bringing and her lack of caring with
Mm-hmm.
the harm she was bringing to these Black men's space.
And like I said, I have a feeling she was risking her dad's life as well, because I think her dad was passing. I just have it. That's the only thing that makes any sense.
Yeah,
So yeah, so it's like she just didn't care
she
because
didn't
she
care.
wanted this
Selfish.
man. She was definitely the character of lust.
Well, and that
Because,
gives the two people that didn't belong also were the most selfish people. The twins
mm-hmm.
might have been criminals, but and the lady might have been an adulterer, and Cornbread might have been daft, and Annie might have been a voodoo queen, but they all had compassion, empathy, and a good heart still. The other two people were selfish, self-centered, and their selfishness got everybody else. in harm's way.
Mm-hmm. And like I said, and if you look at, okay, you look at the three vampires and you look at these two people, these are sort of people that we would let into our community because we feel like, oh, these people are kind of like us.
Right.
But they're actually the people that came in and got everything destroyed.
Right.
So, like I said, he's good. And he did it in the way that, because I don't hear anybody complaining. I don't hear
You
anybody,
know what? I just, ooh,
saying that
girl.
white people are being villainized or anything like that because most people didn't get it. He is only something that a conscious Black person would have picked up on, like,
That, and you know how the anti-Asian, you know how the anti-Asian hate crime bill is kind of harmful to Black communities because they're in our communities and then they can cry about us in our communities and that's harmful to our communities. So I kind of feel like he might have been even touching on that because in the anti-Asian hate crime bill, we have to be very mindful of how we interact with them. So Annie pulling Grace in when Bo, instead of, you know, letting her go out to Bo or whatever. And Annie also was the one, the Black woman was also the one who pulled Mary in and protected Mary when Rennick first came up to the
mm-hmm.
door. So here we are being Captain Sava Black ladies again
Yep.
to our own detriment and downfall. And then Annie was looking all shocked being betrayed by both of them. But we should have expected the shit because we end up betrayed by both of them all the time.
Yep. Like I said, that's one thing. The only thing that, like I said, I just wish that we didn't have to mess up the Black towns, but I wish we would have seen them
Yeah.
because I just
Yeah.
didn't like this portrayal. I feel like we're creating a narrative as though we never own, like we needed these people to have owned the market. And what actually happened is that these people were given stipends by the government and came in and ran our markets out of
Yeah,
business.
no, we know the people that know,
Like
know.
that's what
I mean, the
happened
people that
in real
know
actual life.
us, we
Like Black
know.
people had
The
markets
only
in their
it's the
town.
people that are rewriting
Yeah.
history, trying to close museums, getting books taken off shelves so their kids don't feel bad about their mediocrity. But the people who know. You know what I mean? Like,
Well, that's not in the history books. I this is why I'm not really upset about them getting rid of some of these history books because a lot of them are telling fragmented or just wrong history.
yeah.
And it's done a lot of damage to our people. So I'm like, if y'all want to get rid of it, just get rid of it.
Some of
Because
it is good getting rid of.
yeah,
For sure.
because that's not something that people are taught. And when you and I, we're, I'm not saying we're old, but you know what I mean? Like we're not the young people.
Right.
When you talk to a lot of young people, they don't know a world where Asian people did not own almost every business in the Black community. They think that the world has always
Yeah, but
been that
see,
way,
look,
and it
I'm
was
70s.
not.
I know. I'm
Yeah.
70s. I remember when they started popping up. They were the pop-ups. We were there. They were the pop-ups. We got
Mm-hmm.
eminent domain. Shit sat vacant for a period of time. Then all of a sudden, there was an influx of a lot of other minorities coming in at the same mom and pop shop that you used to have a mom and pop shop. But now it's their mom and pop shop in your community, and they're talking about you buy.
It's sometimes I do get a little upset with us as a people because I feel like they're low hanging fruit. They're very easy to boycott out of business. I mean, that's some
Yeah.
low hanging fruit.
Low. Shut them down.
We
Shut
can
them.
handle
Look,
that.
if you don't want the
And I'm
maid,
sure the
if you don't want the
president would
lady
have our
talking
back.
about you while
You
you're
know what
getting
I
your
mean? Like that's one thing I think that he would have our back on.
yeah, like if you don't want to get talked about while you're getting a pedicure, shut them down. It's so easy to just shut them down, and but we just don't even recognize our own power. I keep talking about this conversation I had recently with a curvy of mine who's international, and she was talking about how the culture, Black culture itself, is one of the most coveted commodities globally, like access to Black culture. If you're makes you cooler, makes you in all of these circles. Now they don't want to live like us, but they definitely want to access our culture, and we don't even understand our greatness in that regard. You know that we are so globally sought
Oh
after.
yeah, we are the culture.
Yeah,
Especially, I mean, this is, you know what I mean? I know you're not trying to go down that rabbit hole, but with the idea of us having already been here, and people say, well, if you guys were already here, how did all of this happen? You can clearly see the way that we have allowed our communities now in present day to be gentrified and taken over.
Yeah.
And this is just what I truly believe. This is what happened to this country in general.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like we're living in the same cycle. The technology just changes. So what is now always was.
Always was. It's always been the same wheel. We just bedazzled it. It's bedazzled now.
So
it's 2025.
It's to me, when I'm sure a lot of us had grandparents that told us, you know, their grandparents were Indians or sort of mixed with Indian, and the mixed thing actually comes from them seeing Native American people on TV saying, well, my grandmother didn't look like this Native American person, maybe she was biracial, but I know she was an Indian. That's where the whole mixed thing came from.
Yeah.
But if you really, it's not even difficult to find depictions of early Americans. They're Black people. There's statues, there's paintings, there's written accounts. You know, it kind of is what it is. But I can just definitely see how we ended up where we are. And I feel like hundreds of years later, we're still making the same choices that got this country snatched from us.
Right. I mean?
And it's not all of us. It's only.
Well, I feel like the movie actually touches on that a little bit with the amount, how we just let them in. We let Grace in. Mm-hmm. We held Mary back. We allow them into our spaces because we are actually the most human humans here. We're the most humanitarian humans on this plane, where we like, it's in us, it's in our blood to just like nurture everybody, but everybody could ultimately turn around and attack us, but we just keep on open arms, and then you end up with your neck gouged open, and you just open arms to the next one. And you're right, it is a continuous cycle of our weaknesses being exploited to their advantage, to our detriment, and our history is being it's not reduced, it's evaporated. Like, where are we? Who are we? Where'd it go? Where'd it go? We're to the where'd it go phase again. We're at the where'd it go.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's how I 100%, when I first started hearing people saying we were already here, I knew that was the truth. I knew it in my soul. And I could definitely see how we got to where we are now. Like, even this whole thing with Mary saying that she's a Black woman, and like, we know that this is some nonsensical story. Like, if your dad was Black, he wouldn't have been able to be with your mom in Mississippi. Like, this whole story is this nonsense. It doesn't make any logical sense.
Well, honestly though, Callie, just like how Trevor Noah is a biracial baby born in South Africa, he was mere existence.
That's South Africa.
But no, it's the same thing, because he did exist. It literally happened. Now his parents weren't married, but he literally was the thing. He was a product of that, who lived in a Black community, but he was with his Black mama. Now, I don't know what was Mary's mom, and I don't remember hearing them say that it was Mary's father who was Black. I could have sworn
I don't know if it was the mom,
it was Mary's mother who was Black, or else why are all these Black people talking about I wanted to go to the funeral?
I think she was some sort of like midwife or something, sounds like. But my whole thing is that the point of me saying is that we sort of just take these stories that they tell us about the past, and we don't really dig deeply into them and go, wait, how could this have worked?
Yeah, it's like, so where are all the ships that brought us over?
So there's many of those.
Wait. So where are all the ships that brought the slaves over?
Exactly. How did they build that many ships with no power tools, no assembly lines? Mm-hmm. They did not have a motor, and they're going against the current. Mm-hmm. I know that people have told us that there's this magical current.
But where are they? They love saving all the remnants. From Africa. They love saving every freaking remnant possible of their torture over us. So where are they at? Where's all the replica?
There's no blueprints. There's no firsthand accounts from the people who would have worked on these boats, because they would have needed a very large crew.
Yep.
There's no manifest of food, water, or supplies. it literally makes no sense, because if you think
But
about what
there are a
happens to the
couple of
human
them,
body, if you can't move around for that amount of time,
right? There are
that
a couple of them
alone
for
can unalive a person.
right.
It
I
didn't.
just am like, where are all the freaking ships? They love keeping that shit. It's like
There's
looking for Noah's
going.
Ark at this. Find me a slave ship and you'll find Noah's Ark also.
Yeah, there's manifest of ships going as to the Caribbean and back, up the Mississippi, up and down the coast of Africa. There's not really a whole lot. There's actually no evidence. And also, if you looked at the man who first started talking about this, he said, "I've discovered the Negro culture, and it's in Africa." Now, if you had got us from Africa, wouldn't you have known what our culture was and where you got us from?
Yeah.
And this is very easy to look up. This is not even like a conspiracy theory. There's a quote from this man saying, "I discovered this." If you had just 50 years ago picked these people up and brought them here, you didn't need to discover where they came. You know where you got them from.
Well, but it only takes like you said earlier, you mentioned something about kids these days don't even remember something.
No, they don't remember a Black community where uh, there wasn't a bunch of Asian owned businesses. They think that this is the way that the world has always been. And that's why I was a little disappointed. I'm like, I understand that this happened in a certain part of Mississippi, but I don't think we really needed this. I think that we could have seen a world where we did own shops and fishing boats and stuff like that, because that was the reality for most Black people,
Right.
except those few Black people that was around this little Asian area. And they actually refer to us as the contaminant. This is in court documents. Those people did not like us. They did not want to be around us. They lobbied as hard as they could to be able to be in the white neighborhoods, to the point where they would actually live in their stores because they did not even want to live near us.
You mean the Chinese people?
Yes.
Okay, so I want to get back to a movie on that part too, because Grace really enraged me. The whole Grace of it all really, really, really enraged me. And I'm going to dig into it. The people who don't know, Grace is the Chinese lady in the movie. Her and her husband, Bo Chow, they had a store, a grocery store. They were the merchants of the town. And so it's exactly what happens now. They have a liquor store or a beauty supply store in our neighborhoods, but there's just like this feeling I was mentioning earlier of like disdain for her environment. But you're there, bitch. The dollars are good enough for you. All of that's great, but you're just not happy being there. Like you just said, they want to be other places with the proximity to power away from us, the contaminants. So I was looking at it on a level of her lateral violence. I keep on talking about that. I learned that term recently. I had been calling it, black on black crime, brown on black crime, whatever, but it's lateral violence when within a minority group, alleged people, I'm still calling them alleged because I don't feel like they have as much color as us, but alleged people of color fighting amongst ourselves, right? So,
yeah. I would say there is no such thing as people of color. There isn't even one Black identity. These are all things that have been sort of made up to keep us chasing our tail. Because what happens is we end up building with our enemies and we keep getting sabotaged and we can never get anywhere because we don't understand who our enemy is.
Right, because we keep letting them in and we fry fish with that bitch in the back, and then all she does is invite the vampires in. So let me get to Grace's betrayal. Okay, so Grace is the one who they safe. All they have to do is make it to morning, y'all. The only thing they have to do is make it to morning. That's all they got to do, and everybody in this picture would have been safe. They all would have made it home because vampires can't be in the daylight. But Grace, the Chinese American character who was living among the Black Southerners, invites the white vampire trio into the juke joint. And it was so jarring to me because I knew she was going to do it. I'm telling you, I was yelling, push her out, push her out. I was yelling it. I knew it was going to happen. I knew she was the weakest link. I already knew it. She was the weakest link. Bye-bye. I wanted her out, but nobody could hear me in the screen. The people next to me asked me to be quiet in the theater, though. But I was like, push her out.
Girl.
Because Annie had just protected her, right? She literally and symbolically broke the protective circle in an act to shatter the trust. And it brought death to the community that fed her family, you guys. It was deep. Oh my gosh. And they said that there's an allegory of lateral violence, the oppressed communities turning on one another due to the proximity to trauma and internalized racism, along with survivalism. And it's a reflection of usury and economic exploitation because our dollars are good enough. But as soon as anything happens, then we're up for grabs. And I'm always talking about it here on Larger Curves, the phenomenon of looking around for the nearest Black person to blame them. This was that on 10. She looked around for the nearest Black people to sacrifice for her to have what she wanted. And she could have just simply left the fucking barn at any time if she wanted to do that. Because there was no way out of this. There was no way out from inviting those hundreds of freaking vampires in. There was no way out. So if you want to die, bitch, Harry Carey, go outside, right? So the echo of historical infiltration was another thing that it highlighted. The idea that this outsider gained entry under the guise of solidarity and necessity because she had the fish that Annie was frying. She had the grease that Annie needed to fry the fish. She made the sign for the juke joint. So she had the wares for the juke joint to exist.
Yeah,
As a
that was the
merchant of
part
town,
that really,
right?
I didn't like that. I almost didn't go see the movie because of that. I was very offended by that.
Right?
Only
Hello.
because I know that my family was able to build these things and there was no Chinese person in sight.
Right.
Like we had fishing boats, we had jig joints, we owned cotton. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Yes,
I get
yes,
it.
my other, we also, there was an oppression. We dealt with racism, but we still were able to build these things without people that shouldn't have been in our community.
Exactly.
I have no other way of saying
I've heard you talk about segregation before, and you are one of those people. You're a segregationalist in a way, aren't you?
I'm aware that economically we did not gain anything. There might be less risk of racial violence, but we also have to think about this. We not only integrated with clear people, we integrated with other Black people that we wouldn't have normally been around, which means that we're now around more violence anyway. Because what people need to understand is that this idea of us being Black people is something that other people put on us. We had communities, and before we had communities and towns, we had tribes.
Yes.
We were in building with other like-minded people with similar values and similar goals. We were not just we're just all Black and we're all together. And that's why I said these sort of encompassing identities, I have found that I think that they're designed to keep us chasing our tail because we don't realize we're trying to build with our enemy. And so we just keep getting torn down by our enemy because we thinking we're all POC, we're all Black. We don't really understand
No. You're right. You're totally right.
Some of these people are your enemy.
I have spent so many years, I've been on a tangent for a good decade about how I'm looking for a word other than Black to identify myself as, because Black was literally given to us by an enemy, an oppressor that also gave us a white Jesus in a Black land. Mm-hmm. And the cockamamie-ness of that fuckery, that's total mind fuckery. If you the statement I just made is total mind fuckery when you really think about that. So I don't know. I feel like Black people, Blackness, while we are great, we're not Black. Like Raven Simone almost has a point, you guys. She's like, why are you guys calling me that? Like, because but she doesn't say it's because the oppressor calls her that. She's saying it for her own different reasons. But I do subscribe to the ideal of not continuing for another 450 whatevers to allow ourselves the moniker that they assign to us?
Well, being called black is just a nice way of saying the N word. I don't know if you've seen this clip. There's of an elderly woman going around, and there's a she's very elderly, and there's a man asking her, and she's explaining, when I was younger, which was probably in the early '60s, being black was saying that someone was black was an insult. That was an offensive term.
Yeah.
This idea of us,
And
I
that's
understand
why,
where you're
actually,
coming
that's around the
from.
time Jesse Jackson was in the, I think it was the 60s, 70s, when he was going around African American. People got mad at being, because there was colored on birth certificates, Negro on birth certificates, Black, and African American. We've been so many things on birth certificates.
Well, the African American thing, there's a whole like history and government funding behind that as well. But I can tell you that Jesse Jackson actually was a recognized member of the Cherokee tribe, like
Oh, bless his
paperwork and
heart.
all. Yeah,
Bless his
like
heart.
so this is
Look,
okay.
I can see it. Now you mentioned that. I can totally see he looked like an
Yeah,
Indian.
essentially, and I'm way oversimplifying this, but essentially what happened is that America wanted to have a colony in Africa, which is how we come up with like Liberia. So they started to, and this happened gradually over time, more and more things became added to it. They started to try to get people to go to Africa. And so they were like, well, these people here kind of look like these people in Africa. Maybe they would be comfortable going there. So they went to these churches and these influencers, because Jesse Jackson was just an influencer. Let's just be very clear. We
Yeah.
just didn't call it that then. They went to these people, and a lot of these people actually received grants and funding to try to get people to identify with this African identity, because they wanted people to essentially go and colonize Africa in the name of America.
Oh, look at that. Look at that. No way.
So that's where this whole
I hadn't heard
African
that. I
thing
had not heard
comes
that. I'm going to
from. And
research
it
it.
actually doesn't exist
I'm
that far
taking
back.
my elevator to level 8 as soon as we get off of here, Callie.
Oh, but this whole African, like us being African, there's a reason why when you talk to elderly Black people, probably over the age of 70, they will almost all tell you the same thing. My grandmother either told me she was mixed with Native American or she was Native American. And like I said, the whole mixed thing started when TV became popular and they saw, I'm sorry, not Native American Indian. Native Americans, they're actually legally two different people. The whole thing of people being mixed, some people literally were mixed. They were, but the whole thing of, oh, everyone is mixed with Indian came from us seeing people on television that didn't look like our parents and grandparents. So to
Yeah.
rationalize why I'm looking at Gunsmoke and I see this man who now we know a lot of these people were like Italian and stuff dressed up as Indians, to rationalize, well, my grandmother definitely didn't look like this guy. My grandfather didn't look like that. So maybe he was just biracial because I know he was an Indian. So that's where this whole mixed with Indian thing came from. But if you talk to really, and some of these people will tell you their tribe and everything, especially if they're not very churchy, because a lot of this African identity stuff was pushed heavily in churches. So if you can, or you lucky enough
Oh,
to be
don't
able to
get me
find,
started. Okay. Well, about the
yeah.
churches in this movie. So I feel like the another message of the vampires was Christianity. And you're talking about the churches, and they have typically been an in into our community's demise with
Mm-hmm.
hive thinking with the white people. And it's always against our thing. Okay, so I'm from Oakland. And Oakland historically, it's very black. It was founded by a white guy, Merritt, Samuel Merritt, um, and all that stuff. But it's traditionally been a very diverse melting pot kind of place. for us, by us. A lot is happening out here, home of the Black Panthers and all of that greatness, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Yet now, what we're having after so many politicians visited our churches, promising with their words all this sweet seductory talk about
Mm-hmm.
inclusivity and unification, everything the vampires are talking about. They would come to our churches and lie in the house of God. They would lie,
Mm-hmm.
lie, lie, cheat, and steal. And now the historical Black people of Oakland and others, it's not just a Black thing, um, but the people, the Oakland natives, can't afford Oakland no more. Oakland natives.
But not only can we not afford to stay in our communities anymore, when we do move away from our communities, we're not moving in community with each other. Most of
Right.
us are moving to places like on the outskirts somewhere where we're the only Black person on the street. So not only are we're losing the idea of us being in community overall. We're not just losing these
Yeah.
specific communities. So I live in a Black community as well. And every time a house goes up for sale over here, I'm like, oh God, I hope some Black people buy this house.
You hope one of us buys it.
I'm
I
just saying it
know.
like this because like I don't want to be, I like my neighborhood and I don't want to be pushed out. But when it comes to the point where you're the only Black person left on the block, you're like, I might as well just leave. Like, why am I here? And that's typically what ends up what happened, especially here in California. And we also have to be honest in the same way that this vampire was technically, he was another minority. He was an Irish, oppressed Irish person.
Yeah.
Gentrification, and you notice none of these three vampires were elite, clear people. They were
Right.
not
They were
wealthy. They
dusty.
were what
They
you would
looked, they
consider.
came to the juke joint looking raggedier than the Negro slave croppers, pretending like what they were offering was shiny gold. And all you
Mm-hmm.
need to do is follow us.
But they were what I think that a lot of Black people would look at. Um, and to be honest, these people are not Irish. They're now coming from Latin America as, oh, you're just like me. You're in the same position I'm in. When actuality, this person is really a colonizer that's just presenting differently because they haven't stolen all your money yet. You know
Right.
what I mean?
Yep.
So to me, the Irish, it's not the Irish now. It's people coming from Latin America doing the same exact thing, especially here in California. Um, you know what I mean? And it's
Yeah.
not to be anti-immigrant, but we have to be honest. These people have their home countries. They have their own countries. But
They do. We
yet,
don't even have a fucking country.
no, this is our country. We have opened the doors just like they let the vampire in. And okay, this to me, this whole movie was a metaphor for what happened to America. You have this mixed race woman. She looks phenotypically like a clear woman and she identifies with these people and she goes out to talk to them. And that then brings that in. Then you have another lady that you have here because you're working with her because you think, oh, she's a minority like me. But
Yeah.
she opens the door and lets all the demons in.
Right.
This is literally what happened to this country. Because you have
Yes.
to understand, a lot of the people coming from Latin America are the people who colonized Latin America. They are not the indigenous people. They are not. They look just like the people in Spain because they are the people that are from Spain or from the Philippines, or there's a lot of groups that have come into Latin America over the years. And now we've sort of made these people, we've given them an identity just like we were giving them an identity. And we're sort of not seeing these people for what they are, because if this was we saw the heavy set, very outwardly racist white man for who and what he was. We saw this Irish man as something different because he is a minority. He is
Right.
a oppressed person. But in actuality, he was more dangerous than the other white man.
Oh,
And they
that
both were white
is
men.
like how as dangerous as when Malcolm X got killed, by one of us too. So it was like an enemy from within. The call is coming from inside the fucking house. And that is the most scary kind of horror person, those kind of, actually
Mm-hmm.
that is one of the scariest movies to me, the guy who's in the dreams, Freddy Krueger, because you can have nightmares all the time and in your head is a very powerful thing. So that type of scary movie used to scare me even more so than like a vampire movie, because that's outside of me, but like if the call
Well,
is
think
coming from
about the first
inside
two,
the fucking house.
those first two, that poor couple that got turned, and that happened to them because the Native American man comes and tells them, you shouldn't let this man in, blah blah. They protect this man because he's white like me,
Yes.
but really this man is a vampire.
Yes.
And then, let's just be real. The man, the other white man that sold them the building, was treated very differently from this Irish man, even though they were both white men. Because
Yes.
Irish man had been labeled as part of a group that was a minority. I'm just
Right.
coming here from Ireland and it's just so hard and I'm oppressed just like you.
Well, and even
You
his presenting,
know?
he was a dirty white man compared to the Klan member dude who appeared to be a kempt white man. Like at least he was shaven and his clothes weren't as dirty.
Mm-hmm.
And
Ain't well,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Well, if you look at, and no offense to the Irish, if you look at some of the old, and there actually is old footage. It may not go all the way back to the 30s, but there's some old footage from like documentaries and stuff, and that is literally what these people look like that came over here. And these are some of the same people now that are calling us N-words and telling us we need to pull ourselves up by our bootstraps.
yeah.
And our
And
government,
we pulled the whole country up by its bootstraps, bitch, by the
yeah,
way.
our government help these people. And what happens is, what a lot of times is because they don't understand anything about this country, they don't know that they're getting a subsidized loan. They don't know that they're getting a tax break, or either the elder of the family knows and they don't tell the rest of the family. So then a generation later, they're running around. Black people are lazy and they're always complaining. And we just got here and we just built all of this and all of
Yes.
that, not really understanding that the United States government helped you do all of these things.
Right. So you can turn around and say that and feel like you're different than us.
No, it's because they took this. You know what? It's so funny. When I really rationalized and accepted the fact that we were already here, everything that they have done to us makes sense because they're stealing this country from us.
Yeah.
The way that they've treated us, the fact that they cannot have any empathy for us, but they have empathy for anyone on earth who has been wronged, even animals, who has gone through any type of atrocity. Everyone has gotten some sort of aid from the United States government, except us, is because their goal is to take this country from us. So they're not about to assist us in being strong in any possible way, just in case we should have some way to take this country back. And they will only allow people in power that are on accord with us living in this system. Because like I said, we're not all together.
Right.
We're not all the same. So a lot of the black people that you see in politics and stuff,
Uh-huh.
they're able to get there because they want this system. They want to be in this system.
They're
They
married.
want this.
You can be a Mary in the black society and not be white passing. You can be Mary and you don't even have to look white.
I don't think Mary knew what she was doing. I think she just identified with them because they were white people, and that's who she identified
No, I'm
with.
talking about as far as like her detriment to her own people, her home, her detriment to her home. So you don't have to just be white passing to ultimately be so
yeah, for sure.
selfish that you're not looking for the unity of us.
Well, imagine that someone wanting to be a vampire because maybe they want to live forever, they feel like they're bigger, stronger, whatever. We have this movie, like I said, he's good. We have a lot of big, large population of people who we have not separated ourselves from because we identify under a unifying Black identity, that they feel that this is better. That's how we ended up being integrated and losing all of our commerce.
Yes.
There are literally complete downtown areas that used to be owned, filled with Black businesses, and they're either vacant or there are now other people there. That is how we ended up here, because you had these people that look like us that wanted to be in this system. They wanted this. They felt like this is better. So in the same way, you might have somebody that might want to say, I want to live forever. I want to be a vampire. This is cool. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So to me, this movie was it was layered very well, and I don't hear nobody complaining. I don't hear nobody saying this is anti-white, this is anti.
Yes.
Because
and I was surprised at that, because like you said, they must not have, it was over their head. If they don't see this as, if they are missing the anti-white message, then they are missing a big message, because it's definitely a message in there about anti-whiteness. And the mere fact that almost like, the white devil, so to speak, was also addressed lightly. So many messages. I appreciate that you came up here. I had a lot more to say, but it's already 2 hours.
Yeah, I gotta get back to
This was
work.
a great conversation. Yeah. Thanks for coming up, Callie Nola.
Hey,
thanks for coming up.
Thanks
No
for
problem.
having me.
No problem.
I like Rescreen.
Oh, isn't this a nice little format?
Yeah,
I like
cool.
the graphics look great.
The
outlook, the
outline.
outlines.
Oh, let me see how this Rescreen works.
Yes. So, okay, I'm just going to end then on this, the grace of it all, because usually in a movie, you'll have, especially a movie where it has to do with race and everything, you would have an opportunity for an arc that doesn't end in moral failure. So almost like a little redemption before the movie's over for one of the proverbial villains. None of the villains in the movie, none of the vampires were redeemed, except for the twin. One of the twins turns and he ends up redeemed. But everybody else was pretty much a vampire to the end. But Grace, particularly, a tragic symbol. Rather than being a straightforward villain, Grace is a tragic mirror to a real historical and present day dynamic between marginalized communities struggling for proximity to whiteness and security. The symbol of how interracial solidarity breaks down when shared oppression isn't accompanied by mutual respect or equity. A cautionary figure who shows how betrayal doesn't always come from overt enemies, but from within supposed alliances. I had an emotional reaction to this, and I feel like it's really valid, because I feel like Ryan Coogler might have wanted to provoke a type of response like this. It holds a mirror up to the truths in our Black communities and the minority experiences. And scenes like this one don't just represent betrayal, they challenge me as a viewer to confront the conditions that enable it. You know, um, I don't think that there was any redemption for Grace. And I would be challenging anyone to say that there was any redeeming quality about Grace. Um, I just feel like she was selfish and harmful to the Black community who fed her family and kept her safe, period. Right? And Coogler seemed to deny Grace's character the arc of absolution, which usually in movies is there. And it's rare in a mainstream cinematic feature like this when a character like Grace could otherwise be softened or understood through a subplot of redemption. And that just wasn't there for her. Her arc ended in moral failure. Grace was protected by the Black community, not just in a symbolic way. We literally housed her, helped raise her and her daughters, and treated them as one of their own. Her betrayal is proactive, not passive. She, Grace, doesn't make the mistake in ignorance. Grace thought about it and then made a choice to bring the predators inside the black people's sacred space. It was kind of like that scene in Thanos movie where they're in Wakanda and open the shit so that the rest of the world doesn't get destroyed. I say let the rest of the world figure that shit out. That's kind of where I am in life. I don't know why black people are always going around saving everybody, because all Thanos did was off the king of Wakanda and half of everybody else anyway. But you let him in to do that so that he wouldn't go do the rest of the world. And I'm just like, the days of self sacrifice should kind of like self preservation. I feel like we should be more on that shit. Now, her betrayal was proactive, not passive. And it wasn't ignorant, it was a definite choice, an action that costed lives and destroyed a temple of culture and community for the black people in that community. And she didn't get a hero's ending. There's no grace in grace. Isn't that prolific? There's no grace in grace. She isn't offered a last minute turn, no sacrifice to make it right. And that omission is loud. It sends a message that not all harm can be undone. And Ryan Coogler, appears to have resisted the common trope where non-black characters are forgiven to make the audience feel better. And he lets the betrayal of that Grace did sting. It literally stung. And that's how it feels in real life when our community is exploited. Good intentions aren't enough, Grace. She may have felt like she was doing what she had to do, or even believed that the vampire's message of love and unity, but her actions betrayed the very people who protected her. This reflects a real phenomenon where members of adjacent marginalized groups, other minorities, are willing to sacrifice Black safety and culture for their own advancement, security, or validation from power structures, whether in business, activism, or politics. And that was really profound because it got me thinking back about the Anna Navarro, Michael Singleton immigration kerfuffle that happened last Friday, where Anna Navarro, a lateral minority, air quotes, because she definitely gets to check white Latino, white Hispanic. The Hispanic makes her a minority, the white makes her a majority. So she gets to exist in this like kind of skewed place where Anna Navarro last week said there's a hell of a lot of other people other than blacks who were brought to this country illegally as a way to provoke a point in an immigration argument about illegal immigrants being deported and not being allowed to have the same rights that black people have. I was like, really, bitch? I was offended at that. I was high key offended. I was like, because Anna Navarro gets paid to talk. And I felt like she was doing what gets done to black people a lot. Like she was throwing our trauma around and mucking up our traumas, competing with the trauma of being black in America and her trauma of being an immigrant in America. A second. I thought that was prolific. That it got me thinking about Anna Navarro. But basically, yeah, Grace could have went outside, and I was screaming, "Let her throw her out," because I knew she would be the weakest link. Because the other one who wasn't supposed to be there, Mary, was already out with them, and she had already proven herself to be a weak link also. So we just already knew the other weak link was going to be the other non-black. So Grace's arc also showed to grow up among the Black folks, but she never really saw them. Her proximity gave her protection, and she never really internalized the values of the community that raised her. And I'm telling you, her energy in the things was very like she had a disdain for walking around there, and she didn't really like being where she had to be, but she couldn't be with the white people on the white people side of town, you know. And her desire to choose the vampires instead of continue to protect the people that protected her. It was a lot to like watch that, along with the whole Mary thing. You know, Grace just was not, she was a pariah. Grace was a pariah within the community. Definitely. Yeah, we could talk about it again after I go see it for the second time. I'll come back and we will see it for the second time. But we're right at 2 hours, and I feel I like that's long enough to talk about Sinners for today. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you haven't seen Sinners, I suggest you go see it. Make sure you smash that like button, smash the sub. Oh, yeah, she said she could beat up every Black woman in there. Yeah. That's what Mary had said. Mary said she could beat up. Mary said she could beat up every Black woman in there. Yep, she sure did. You taught me how to fight. You know I can beat up all these bitches. Yeah. Uh-huh. Yep. Anyway, you guys, thanks for coming through. Smash the buttons. Here we're all equal. It'll take you far. Get the legs started. Come have some fun. He's the one. You know where to come. Thanks for coming through.